What up, y'all? St. Pete. In this video, I'm going to read a couple pages from this book called New World Order, The Ancient Plan of Secret Societies by William T. Still. William T. Still is the son of a high-ranking military, I think he was Air Force guy, and his father had put out a memo in 1977, I think it was, that during Nixon's administration, that there was a group in the government that was planning a military coup. And he put this memo out, and yeah, this is his son who wrote this book. This book is fantastic. It really, I'm really loving it. If you're interested in it, and you hear what I read and you're interested in it, then I would jump on it because it's sold out on Amazon. There aren't none available, and uh, they give you a link to Abe Books. That's where I got it at, and the price is going up crazy. Some of them are going up to $100. I think the cheapest one might be 40 something at this point, but this sucker is going to go through the roof, just like just like uh, where is it? It's like just like this one, Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. That's a must read. You can get the PDF because if you were to buy this now, this costs $4,800 brand new, and I think the cheapest one is in the thousands. Um, so this one's going to go there eventually too. So yeah, and right before I get started, I just want to put this one out there too. Fire in the Minds of Men by James Billington. This is another must read if you're into history and into the revolutions, the French Revolution, the German Revolution, the Polish Revolution, all the revolutions in Europe. And James Billington was, head of the Library of Congress. So it's a very scholarly, dumb book. It's really amazing, really in depth into the faith of the revolutionaries. Most of the authors cover the events of the French Revolution. This guy goes into what were their beliefs and what it comes down to. Like this book says, the ancient plan of secret societies is what you see. James Billington shows you in this book that all these revolutionaries were Masons. You know what I mean? All these revolutions that were fomented by secret societies, in the guise of doing it for the people. America was a little bit different. America was it was way different than the revolutions of Europe. And he gets into it why. That's a whole nother video. But um, so yeah, I'm gonna just read this real quick, and we'll go through it. And any questions or comments, we'll take it from there. This is all very interesting, but is there hard evidence linking international banking to secret societies? There seems to be. In the late 1800s, multi-millionaire diamond tycoon Cecil Rhodes and some of his wealthy British friends decided to form a secret society loosely based on the legends surrounding King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, but based on Masonic principles. The group, formed in 1891, consisted of an inner circle including Rhodes, Lord Rothschild, and others known as the Circle of Initiates, and an outer circle which came to be known as the Round Table. What were the founding tenets of this exceedingly powerful new secret society? Rhodes took his cues from his mentor, John Ruskin, his professor of fine arts at Oxford University. Ruskin was a follower of the philosophies of Plato and read Plato every day. Of course, Marx, Engels, Proudhon, and Saint Simeon drank from that same fountain. Therefore, there is a remarkable parallel in the writings of Ruskin, Marx, and other disciples of Plato. Plato wanted a ruling class with a powerful army to keep it in power and a society completely subordinate to the monolithic authority of its rulers. He also advocated using whatever force was necessary for the wiping out of all existing government and social structure so the new rulers could begin with a clean canvas on which to develop the portrait of their great new society. And keep in mind when you're hearing stuff, this book was written in 1990, and when keep in mind what's going on today and the parallels. And because the one thing about these secret societies and stuff, they use the same plan over and over, because it works. They you see the patterns. It's crazy because the further into the past you could look, the further into the future you can see. And that's when you see, like, uh wiping out all existing government and social structures. What are they doing now? They're tearing down all the statues. They're wiping out any semblance of individual rights. I mean, this is the formula that they're following right now. And like I said, mind you, this was written in 1990. So, which to develop the portrait of their great new reset, or their great new society, as it says in here, but it's their great reset, which they got to wipe everything out. They got to tear it all down to start with a clean canvas. All right. Plato's ideal society called for the elimination of marriage and the family, so that all women could belong to all men and vice versa. Children were to be taken by the state and raised anonymously. What do we see with the Common Core? Well, Common Core was, asking children, how is the state like your family but better? It's crazy. He envisioned a society built on three classes: the ruling class, the military class, and the worker class. Private property would be eliminated, and the ruling class would devote their intellectual energy to determining what was good for the masses in the working class. See places like BlackRock and Vanguard, they're just buying up everything. Between 1909 and 1913, the Round Table Group became international in scope. Semi secret Round Table groups were established in America and in all the chief British dependencies to spread their gospel. These still function in 8 countries. When Rhodes died in 1902, he left much of his fortune to the Rhodes Scholarship, a program he established to bring foreign students to Oxford and teach them his ruling class concepts. The rest of his fortune was left to his original Round Table group. Armed with this money and that of other loyal Rhodes supporters, the Round Table formed an interlocking group in 1919 called the Royal Institute of International Affairs as part of an ambitious program of international expansion. In the U.S., this group was known and is still known as the Council on Foreign Relations. That is the that's where people really have to focus on the Council on Foreign Relations. And if you look at their foreign affairs that they put out, that's probably the most accurate information of where we're headed. That's where you could go to really get a your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Okay. Uh, oh, and Communist Clinton, he was a Rhodes Scholar, for example. Um, In the United States, some of the wealthiest of these men set up well endowed foundations to study how to go about implementing the goals of the secret societies. These foundations have been extensively studied only once, in 1953 and 1954, as a direct outgrowth of the McCarthy hearings. Professor Quigley was the Georgetown University history professor chosen by these secret societies, the 20th century inheritors of the Baconian Atlantean concept, to write their view of history. But far from belittling the anti communist thrust of the McCarthy hearings, Quigley could see from his unique perspective that, if anything, they had not gone far enough. He wrote that the McCarthy hearings landed well short of the mark. Quigley gloated that the important revelation of the McCarthy hearings was not the exposure of a few red sympathizers, but the uncovering of the very heart of the problem. Professor Carol Quigley is who Clinton gives a shout out to. Now, this is the book that they're talking about. This behemoth right here, called Tragedy and Hope. It tells you right there. This is Professor Carol Quigley, Georgetown University professor, telling you in this book that there's a secret society that is controlling from behind the scenes. Must read. Following backward to their source, the threads which led from admitted communists like Whittaker Chambers through Alger Hiss and the Carnegie Endowment to Thomas Lamont and the Morgan Bank, a congressional committee fell into the whole complicated network of the interlocking tax-exempt foundations. The McCarthy hearings led in July 1953 to the Special Committee to investigate tax-exempt foundations, headed by Tennessee Representative B. Carroll Reese. This group made some truly shocking discoveries concerning the connections between communism and American tax-exempt foundations. Although they were virtually unreported in the nation's press, Professor Quigley explained, it soon became clear that people of immense wealth would be unhappy if the investigation went too far, and that the most respected newspapers in the country, closely allied with these men of wealth, would not get excited enough about any revelation to make the public publicity worthwhile. An interesting report showing the left-wing associations of the interlocking nexus of tax-exempt foundations was issued in 1954 rather quietly. Something I was just going to say about that. Now, the committee appointed Norman Dodd as its research director. Dodd was never pleased with the coverage of the story by the press and devoted much of his life to studying these foundations, trying in vain to bring the story to the attention of the public. Late in life, he finally started making headway. In a radio interview on May 30th, 1977, he explained that he studied foundations over a 50-year span and discovered what their real purposes are. The oldest of the tax-exempt foundations came into existence long before the income tax and the estate tax. Therefore, they had come into existence not motivated as foundations subsequently were motivated by tax savings. These foundations had a purpose unrelated to tax saving incentives. And again, that goes back to, once you notice, revolutionary faith. You know, the whole the idea of communism came from the secret societies. The secret societies gave it to Marx to be their front man. And like up in that other paragraph when it talks about how the media, the corporate media back then, didn't really talk about the Reese committee. uh, it's just an example of when Rockefeller thanked the press for not making public what his views was. You could look that up. He did it. Thank the press. Thank you for not letting everybody know what exactly we were doing. He found that these oldest foundations represented 85% of the total amount of capital in the nation's foundations. One of the oldest of these is the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, set up in 1908. Dodd was allowed to examine the minutes of the Board of Trustees and found that for the first year, the members concentrated on an academic discussion of whether there was any means more effective than war to alter the life of the people of a nation. Obviously, altering the course of life in America was their goal. It is only natural to ask, why? For what purpose? Apparently, this was in accordance with some larger plan that required a different America than was currently constituted. As we have seen, the chaos surrounding war is an ideal growth media for rapid change, malevolent change, Dodd wrote. That leads to question number two, which is how do we involve the United States in a war? This occurred around the beginning of 1909, and I doubt if there was any subject more removed from the minds of the American people that time than the possibility of being involved in a war. According to Dodd, the members of the Carnegie Group concluded that in order to get America into an upcoming war, they had to control the diplomatic machinery of the State Department. This agreed with information Dodd had already developed from other sources, which revealed that all high appointees in the State Department took place only after they had been cleared through something called the Council of Learned Societies, which was set up by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. It is interesting to note that Masons, writing in their journal, New Age, claimed that the cause of World War I was a secret treaty between the Vatican and Serbia. Then, when the treaty became known, Gavrilo Princip assassinated the Roman Catholic heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It was later shown that the assassin, Princip, and others of the plotters were Freemasons and members of the Black Hand, a revolutionary organization affiliated with Freemasonry. Once World War I was underway, Dodd saw in the minutes of the Carnegie Board a note to President Wilson requesting that he see to it that war does not end too quickly. And remember what Wilson said, Wilson said, you better never mention their name above a whisper. That's what he said. Wilson campaign backer Bernard Brunch was appointed to head up the War Industries Board. He, like the Rockefellers, reaped profits of $200 million from the war. Dodd then saw memos in which Carnegie Foundation members were congratulating themselves on their success, in that the war had brought about a change in the American psyche. Syndicated columnist Joseph Kraft, writing in Harper's in July 1958, says that records from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace showed that their trustees hoped to involve the United States in a world war to set the stage for world government. Dodd also learned the truth for himself. This is where the power comes from, to bring the idea of one world government to the point where it is acceptable to the people of this country. This is the primary aim, and everything that has happened since then is a means to that one end. Eventually, during his investigation for Congress, Dodd was asked by the president of the Ford Foundation, Rowan Gather, to come and visit. Gather said, Mr. Dodd, you were invited because we thought you would tell us why Congress was interested in the operations of foundations like ourselves. All of us at the executive and policy making level here at the foundation have had experience with the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA, or the European Economic Administration. We operate here from directives which are issued from the White House. The substance of these directives is as follows. We shall use our grant-making power to alter life in the United States so that we can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union. Dodd was stunned. I almost fell over in my chair, he said. After the end of World War I, the Federal Reserve was lending millions to the new revolutionary communist dictatorship in Russia, which had recently taken power. Why would some of the richest men in the world financially back communism, the system that was openly vowing to destroy the so-called capitalism that made them wealthy, according to Gary Allen, which that's another one. Where is it? This is another great book, too, for history. None Dare Call It a Conspiracy by Gary Allen. Another one people gotta get. Know this history. If one understands that socialism is not a share the wealth program, but is in reality a method to consolidate and control the wealth, then the seeming paradox of super rich men promoting socialism becomes no paradox at all. Instead, it becomes logical. Even the perfect tool of power seeking megalomaniacs, communism, or more accurately, socialism, is not a movement of the downtrodden masses, but of the economic elite. And that's what the secret societies in Europe, they they were, you know, they weren't like America. That wasn't, they weren't, in America was the idea that we get our rights from God and that every man is to be treated equally. It's not that every man is created equally, but it's that every man is to be treated equally. And, that was the difference between the American Revolution and the, French Revolution and the European revolutions. They just wanted to replace the monarchs with, just another power, so, in 1970, researcher W. Cleon Salkin wrote in his book, The Naked Capitalist, power from any source tends to create an appetite for additional power. It was almost inevitable that the super rich would one day aspire to control not only their own wealth, but the wealth of the whole world. To achieve this, they were perfectly willing to feed the ambitions of the power-hungry political conspirators who were committed to the overthrow of all existing governments and the establishment of a central worldwide dictatorship. Salkin then asks a common sense question: what if these revolutionaries get out of control and try to seize power from the super rich? After all, it was Mao who, in 1938, stated his position concerning power. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. The secret society of the London Wall Street Axis elected to take the risk. The master planners attempted to control revolutionary communist groups by feeding them vast quantities of money when they obeyed, and then financing their opposition if they seemed to be getting out of control. All right, so I'm gonna stop that one. I'm gonna stop that there. You know, I'm gonna do another one after that because I don't want to make these too long. Let that sink in, and then I'm just gonna do a part two, which I'll talk about the Council on Foreign Relations. We'll get more into the Council on Foreign Relations. That was just to give you an introduction into the idea of Cecil Rhodes and these roundtable groups, and how the what came from Cecil Rhodes and Rothschild and these roundtable groups was the Royal Institute of International Affairs. That was, pushing the expansion of international global government. This is where it started to become institutionalized at this point, with these guys like Cecil Rhodes, created these institutions, and the arm of the Royal Institute of International Affairs is the Council on Foreign Relations here in America. So, um, yeah, we'll get more into the Council on Foreign Relations um, a little in the next video. So let that sink in. Enjoy your day. Be dangerous to those that threaten freedom. St. Pete, I'm out. Peace.